When you hear the word genie, you probably get this image in your head, right? A big, friendly, blue guy ready to grant you 3 wishes. But what if I told you that friendly face is just, well, it's a mask. And behind it is a story that's thousands of years old, way more complex and honestly a little bit terrifying. All right, let's get into it and uncover the real story behind the legend. So, first things first, we've got to draw a line in the sand between the modern genie and the ancient Jinn. On one side, you have the pop culture version we all know and love, a kind servant who lives in a lamp, all about making your dreams come true. But on the other side, you have the original, the Jinn. These are ancient spirits literally made of fire who can be good or evil. And believe me, their story is so much bigger than some tiny brass lamp. To find where the Jinn really come from, we have to go way back. We're talking about the deserts of the pre-Islamic Arabian Peninsula. This is where the stories first started. And they weren't fairy tales. Nope. They were explanations for all the strange, dangerous things that would happen in a pretty harsh and unforgiving world. The word itself, jinn, it's an Arabic term, and it's not a name for just one type of being. Think of it more like a category, a collective noun for a whole class of supernatural creatures. And these were not wish granters. The earliest legends just describe them as spirits and demons roaming the desert. And you can really feel the fear people had when you look at what they believed. These weren't just mischievous sprites. They were seen as truly evil spirits that haunted filthy, unclean places. They could shapeshift into animals, and they were so powerful that some people actually worshiped them like gods. But they weren't immortal. It was thought you could kill one with a weapon. And maybe the most chilling part? They were blamed for causing diseases and mental illness. Some traditions, like in Morocco, even said jinn would specifically target the vulnerable, what they called tired souls, people who were unhappy or unstable, and possessed them. But the story of the jinn doesn't stay there. A huge shift happens when they get written into major religious texts. This moment totally changed their status in the universe, pulling them out of the realm of chaotic demons and into something much more defined. And you can see that evolution right here. In the pre-Islamic days, they were feared as dark gods and demons. Then you get to the time of King Solomon, and suddenly they're being described as nature spirits that a human king could tame and command. And finally, in the Quran, they get a whole new classification, putting them on a level that's much, much closer to us humans. Yeah, the story of Solomon is a real turning point. Here you have a human king who has total power over the jinn. He supposedly used that power to command them as a workforce, forcing them to help build the great first temple. I mean, think about that demotion, from being worshipped as gods to being used as supernatural construction workers. And their place in scripture isn't just a tiny footnote either. The jinn are mentioned 29 times in the Quran. There's even an entire chapter named after them. This really cements their place in the theology, not as some forgotten folktale, but as a recognized part of creation. So this reclassification is the key. To really solidify the idea of one true God, the jinn had to be knocked off their pedestal. They became lesser spirits, existing somewhere between angels and humans. And just like humans, they would have to face judgment in the end. Scholars see it a couple of ways. Either jinn is a catch-all term for any invisible beings, like angels and demons, or it refers to this specific race of creatures living parallel to humanity. So what are jinn, really? I mean, what are they made of? How does their world work? Well, the traditions paint this incredible picture of a parallel, unseen society. According to the stories, while humans were made from clay, the jinn were created from a smokeless fire. Their whole elemental makeup is just different from ours. And, super important, they were here first. They're an older race that walked the earth long before humans ever did. Islamic tradition, specifically the Hadith, even breaks them down into 3 main types. You've got the ones that can fly through the air. Then you have the shapeshifters, who often show up as snakes and dogs. And then there's a third kind that's more earthbound, moving around and living in a way that kind of mirrors human life. And their society has some fascinating parallels to ours. Okay, so they're way stronger and faster than us, but they still need to eat, sleep, and drink. They're organized into different tribes, and each tribe was supposedly made from its own unique blend of fire. And these tribes fought a lot. People used to believe that sudden, violent desert storms were actually the physical result of invisible battles raging between rival jinn clans. There's another belief that jinn live underground, plotting against us and only come to the surface to punish people who do wrong, sometimes by kidnapping children. Sort of a dark moral police force. So you might be wondering, Where did they all go? Well, one legend tells of a time when the Jinn became totally corrupt and greedy, and they ignored all the divine warnings. So God sent angels to purge the earth of them. Most were destroyed, and the few survivors were exiled to the most remote corners of the world. And that's the story of why they remain hidden from us today. Okay, so this brings us to the Great Transformation. How in the world did we get from these ancient, fiery, warring desert spirits to the friendly character in the lamp? Well, the bridge between those two worlds is one legendary collection of stories. And that bridge was 1001 Nights. It was put together over centuries, from the 8th to the 14th. This collection of folktales, you might know it as Arabian Nights, took all those ancient beliefs about the Jinn and remixed them into these amazing adventure stories. And when those stories made their way to Europe, they completely changed how the West saw these creatures. And if you look at the most famous story of all, Aladdin and the Wonderful Lamp, the idea gets even more refined. Most people don't realize Aladdin doesn't just have one Jinn, he has two. There's a lesser one that's bound to a magic ring, and then there's the much more powerful, famous Jinn from the lamp. See? They're not just wild spirits anymore, they're now servants, and their roles are defined by the objects they're tied to. It's a huge step towards the simplified genie that Disney would make famous centuries later. So this is the key takeaway here. Arabian Nights basically locked in this new idea of the Jinn as a magical being that could be controlled. The power wasn't with the spirit anymore, it was with the person who held its container. This is the direct ancestor of our modern genie. And that brings us right back to where we started, because the most famous part of the whole genie myth, the 3 wishes, it carries a hidden warning. It's like a faint echo of the Jinn's true, ancient, and dangerous nature. We've all heard that phrase a million times, be careful what you wish for. It isn't just a random piece of advice, it's a warning that is deeply, deeply tied to every story about a genie, and for a really good reason. It's like the cultural ghost of a much older, more dangerous idea. Think about it. That classic twist, where a wish goes horribly wrong or gets interpreted in the worst possible way. That's not just a clever trick to move the plot along. It's the last piece of cultural memory we have of the Jinn's true character. Not as a happy-go-lucky servant, but as a powerful, morally gray, and potentially dangerous being that might not have your best interest at heart. So the next time you think of a genie popping out of a lamp, I want you to ask yourself, what are you really seeing? Is it the sanitized, friendly cartoon servant? Or is it maybe a glimpse of something much, much older? Something born of smokeless fire, an ancient spirit from a world we've forgotten? Yeah, the story is so much deeper than the lamp.